December 16th, 1944, Ardennes Forest, Belgium. Major Heinrich Vogel of the 2nd Panzer Division pressed his pencil against the trembling pages of his field journal, knowing that what he was about to record would sound like the ravings of a shell-shocked soldier. "The Americans have turned mathematics into murder," he wrote in shaking handwriting. "Their guns don't just fire, they calculate, coordinate, and kill with a precision that defies belief. In 6 hours, they have destroyed what took us 6 months to build. This is not artillery as we know it. This is something else entirely." What Vogel had witnessed that morning would earn American artillery a nickname that German soldiers would whisper with a mixture of fear and grudging respect: the King of Battle. But what the Wehrmacht didn't understand, what they wouldn't fully comprehend until the war's end, was that they weren't facing superior firepower alone. They were confronting an entirely new philosophy of warfare, one that had transformed artillery from a blunt instrument into a surgical weapon of unprecedented lethality. The morning of December 16th had begun with such promise for German forces. Operation Wacht am Rhein, Hitler's desperate gamble to split Allied forces and recapture Antwerp, launched with the fury of 200,000 men and 600 tanks crashing through the snow-covered Ardennes. Initial reports streaming into German command posts spoke of breakthrough, of surprised American units falling back in disorder, of the old Wehrmacht magic returning. But by noon, something had gone terribly wrong. Colonel Franz Dietrich, commanding the 560th Volksgrenadier Division's artillery, watched through his field glasses as American positions that should have been overrun began erupting in coordinated defensive fire. "It made no sense," he would later tell Allied interrogators. "We had achieved complete surprise. Their forward units were retreating, yet within minutes, accurate fire was falling on our assault columns from positions we hadn't even located." The German artillery doctrine, refined through years of blitzkrieg success, relied on massed batteries firing predetermined barrages at map coordinates. It was devastating when it worked, but it was also predictable, slow to adjust, and dependent on extensive preparation. What they encountered on December 16th was something entirely different. Lieutenant Klaus Weber of the 12th SS Panzer Division recorded in his diary, "The American shells seemed to follow us. When we moved, they moved with us. When we took cover, they found us anyway. It was as if every shell had eyes." Weber survived the war, but his entire company didn't. By evening, 180 men had been reduced to 23. What the Germans were experiencing was the result of a revolution in artillery tactics that had begun 2 years earlier in the deserts of North Africa. The American military, learning harsh lessons from early defeats at Kasserine Pass, had fundamentally reimagined how artillery should function on the modern battlefield. The architect of this transformation was Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe, who would later become famous for his nuts response at Bastogne. But his real contribution to victory came through his work developing what the U.S. Army called the Fire Direction Center System, a revolutionary approach that treated artillery not as individual gun batteries, but as a unified mathematical weapon. Captain Robert Harrison, a former MIT mathematics professor serving with the 9th Infantry Division's artillery, explained the concept in a letter to his wife. "Imagine if every gun in the sector could speak to every other gun instantly. Imagine if a single observer could call down fire from dozens of batteries he's never seen, located miles apart, all hitting the same target within seconds of each other. That's what we've built, Sarah. We've turned artillery into a science." The system worked through a network of radio-equipped forward observer teams, centralized fire direction centers using sophisticated calculation methods, and standardized procedures that allowed any battery to fire any mission. Most revolutionary of all was the concept of time-on-target missions, where shells fired from multiple batteries at different ranges would all impact simultaneously, creating devastating concentrated firepower that gave enemy forces no time to take cover. The German artillery observers watching American fire missions unfold couldn't understand what they were seeing because it defied everything they knew about artillery employment. Traditional German doctrine required individual battery commanders to calculate firing data for their own guns, leading to delays of 15 to 20 minutes between target identification and shells on target. The American system reduced this to under 3 minutes for the first rounds, with subsequent adjustments coming in 30-second intervals. Staff Sergeant Michael O'Brien of the 1st Infantry Division's 32nd Field Artillery Battalion recorded the technical mathematical precision. Mission received 0847 hours. Battery Executive Officer plots target coordinates on firing chart. Deflection 2,840 mils. Charge 5. Fuse quick. Range 8,200 meters. Data transmitted to gun sections 0848 hours. First rounds complete 0849 hours. Adjustment right 100, drop 200. Fire for effect authorized 0850 hours. Mission complete 0851 hours. 4 minutes from call to destruction.
But the real innovation was the coordination between batteries. Master Sergeant James Mitchell, serving with the 4th Armored Division, described a typical serenade mission. We'd get a call for fire on a German strongpoint. Instead of just my battery responding, the Fire Direction Center would coordinate 6 different batteries, 105mm howitzers, 155mm guns, even 8-inch artillery if available. Each battery would calculate different flight times to ensure simultaneous impact. The Germans would see 1 observation round, maybe 2. Then suddenly 200 shells would arrive in the same 10-second window. The psychological effect was devastating. German veterans, accustomed to the gradual buildup of traditional artillery barrages that allowed time to seek cover, found themselves facing instantaneous annihilation from weapons they couldn't see or counter. The morning of December 17th brought the full weight of American artillery coordination crashing down on German assault formations. The 2nd Panzer Division, spearheading the northern thrust of the offensive, encountered what their after-action reports described as unprecedented defensive fire coordination. Oberst Wilhelm Hoffmann, commanding Panzer Grenadier Regiment 304, recorded in his unit diary, "Advanced elements reached the Amblev River at 0630 hours. American resistance appeared minimal. At 0645 hours, forward companies reported taking American positions with light casualties. At 0647 hours, concentrated enemy artillery fire commenced on our advanced units, reserves, and supply columns simultaneously. By 0700 hours, the regiment had ceased to exist as an effective fighting force." The Americans had perfected what they called defensive concentrations. Pre-plotted fire missions on likely avenues of approach, registered during quiet periods and executed instantly when German forces appeared. But unlike static defensive fires of World War I, these concentrations could be shifted, combined, and adjusted in real time based on actual enemy movement. Technical Sergeant Paul Anderson of the 82nd Airborne Division's attached artillery described the coordination. "We had forward observers with every rifle company, every tank platoon, even with some squad leaders. When Fritz showed up, we didn't just call for fire, we called for orchestrated destruction. Observer Alpha might spot the main assault, Observer Bravo picks up the supporting attack, Observer Charlie sees the reserves moving up. All 3 calls go to the same Fire Direction Center, which plots a symphony of steel." The German 12th Volksgrenadier Division lost 40% of its effective strength in the first 48 hours, not to direct infantry combat, but to artillery fires that seemed to anticipate their every move. German artillery commanders, recognizing they faced something beyond conventional firepower, attempted desperate countermeasures that only highlighted their tactical disadvantage. Colonel Ernst Müller, commanding the 18th Volksgrenadier Division's artillery regiment, ordered his batteries to engage in counter-battery fire against American gun positions. The results were catastrophic for German forces. American artillery employed what they called shoot and scoot tactics, firing missions and immediately displacing to alternate positions. German counter-battery fire repeatedly struck empty positions while American guns continued firing from new locations. Worse, every German muzzle flash was instantly detected by American sound-ranging and flash-spotting teams, bringing devastating counter-counter battery fire down within minutes. Lieutenant Colonel Friedrich Braun of the 116th Panzer Division's artillery recorded the futility, attempted to suppress enemy batteries at coordinates 847.392, fired 60 rounds, observed hits on target area. Enemy fire continued unabated from the same general location. Moved battery to alternate position. Enemy counter-battery fire struck our primary position 15 minutes after displacement. Pattern indicates enemy sound detection capability far exceeds our estimates. The German solution, concentrating artillery under centralized control, proved impossible to implement. Their radio networks, designed for the rapid advances of blitzkrieg, couldn't handle the complex coordination required for defensive operations. American radio intercept teams routinely monitored German artillery communications, often calling in fire missions on German gun positions before the German batteries could complete their own fire missions.
British ammunition expenditure suggests industrial capacity dedicated entirely to artillery support. Recommend immediate investigation of enemy artillery doctrine and equipment. The investigation never came. By December 22nd, German forces were already retreating from their deepest penetrations into American lines, their offensive capability shattered not by tanks or aircraft, but by the mathematical precision of American artillery coordination. What German commanders couldn't know was that they faced not just better guns, but an entirely new concept of warfare, one that treated the battlefield as a geometric problem to be solved through coordinated fire, rather than a territory to be conquered through individual unit actions. The nickname King of Battle began appearing in captured German documents as early as December 23rd, used initially with bitter sarcasm by soldiers who had watched their formations disappear under the weight of perfectly coordinated American fire. But as the battle continued, the sarcasm faded, replaced by genuine tactical respect for a weapon system that had redefined the nature of modern combat. January 3, 1945. The Ardennes offensive, Hitler's last desperate gamble, lay in ruins. But the true scope of American artillery's dominance was only beginning to reveal itself as German forces attempted their retreat. What had started as tactical superiority and individual engagements had evolved into something far more devastating: the complete breakdown of German operational capabilities across the entire Western Front. Colonel Hans Zimmermann of the 6th SS Mountain Division recorded in his final combat report, "The withdrawal has become a mathematical impossibility. American artillery coordinates pursuit fires with the precision of a Swiss chronometer. Every road, every bridge, every assembly area receives accurate fire within minutes of occupation. We are not retreating. We are being systematically exterminated by an enemy who fights with slide rules and logarithms." The American artillery system had evolved beyond individual fire missions into what military historians would later recognize as the first example of battlefield management through firepower coordination. Every German movement was tracked, calculated, and engaged with a precision that turned retreat into slaughter. Technical Sergeant William Rodriguez of the 3rd Armored Division's Artillery Battalion described the pursuit phase. "We had perfected what we called movement interdiction. German columns couldn't travel more than 2 kilometers without walking into a pre-planned fire concentration. Our forward observers were leapfrogging with the armor, calling in fires on retreating formations before they could establish new defensive positions. It was like hunting with mathematics." The psychological impact on German forces proved as devastating as the physical destruction. Soldiers who survived the initial offensive now faced an enemy that seemed omniscient, capable of predicting their movements and responding with overwhelming firepower before they could even dig in. Behind the tactical revolution lay an industrial and logistical miracle that German intelligence had completely failed to comprehend. American artillery dominance wasn't just about better tactics, it was about the systematic application of American industrial capacity to the problem of delivering explosive force with mathematical precision. Master Sergeant Charles Thompson, serving with the 1st Army's Ammunition Supply Depot, recorded the staggering numbers in his logistics journal. Daily ammunition consumption for artillery during active operations: 105 mm howitzer rounds, 45,000 per day across the sector; 155 mm howitzer rounds, 18,000 per day; 8-inch howitzer rounds, 3,200 per day. Total explosive weight delivered daily, 847 tons. German artillery response: estimated 89 tons per day, declining rapidly due to ammunition shortages. The disparity represented more than superior logistics. It demonstrated the complete American commitment to artillery as the decisive weapon of modern warfare. While German industry struggled to produce sufficient ammunition for existing guns, American factories were expanding production of both weapons and ammunition at rates that defied German comprehension. Colonel Robert Eisenhower, brother of the Supreme Allied Commander and serving as Chief Artillery Coordinator for the 12th Army Group, submitted weekly reports that read like industrial production summaries. Artillery ammunition production this month: 2.3 million rounds all calibers. Projected consumption next month: 1.7 million rounds. Surplus production dedicated to building strategic reserves for spring offensive operations. German captured documents indicate enemy ammunition production estimated 340,000 rounds monthly, declining due to raw material shortages. The numbers revealed the true scope of American artillery dominance. German forces weren't just outgunned, they were facing an enemy that could sustain artillery expenditure at rates 10 times greater than German production capacity. The clinical efficiency of American artillery coordination masked a human tragedy of unprecedented proportions for German forces. Unlike the dramatic destruction of cities or the heroic narratives of tank battles, artillery killed quietly, systematically, and often without witnesses to record the individual stories of destruction. Obergruppenführer Klaus Weber of the 277th Volksgrenade Division survived the war to provide testimony to Allied interrogators that revealed the personal impact of facing American artillery. "You must understand, we were not afraid of American infantry or even their tanks. Those were enemies we could see, fight, maybe defeat with courage and skill. But their artillery was different. It was like fighting mathematics itself. You could not be brave against an equation."
Weber's company, originally 180 men, was reduced to 12 effective soldiers by February 1945, with 80% of casualties attributed to artillery fire. His testimony continued. "The Americans perfected a special kind of terror. You would hear the whistle of incoming shells and know that someone, somewhere, had calculated your exact position and decided you should die. There was no randomness, no chance for heroism, just mathematics and death." The psychological impact extended beyond individual soldiers to entire units. German medical reports from the period document the emergence of what doctors termed coordination neurosis, a specific form of combat fatigue triggered by exposure to precisely coordinated artillery fire. Soldiers reported nightmares about mathematical calculations, obsessive counting behaviors, and paralyzing anxiety when hearing any mechanical sounds that resembled radio communications. Dr. Wilhelm Hoffmann, a German military psychiatrist serving with Army Group B, recorded in his medical journal, "The American artillery system has created a new form of psychological warfare. Soldiers report feeling calculated against rather than simply attacked. The precision of enemy fire creates the impression that individual soldiers are being personally targeted by an omniscient enemy. Traditional concepts of fate, luck, and survival skill become meaningless when confronted with mathematical precision. As the war progressed and captured American equipment became available for examination, German technical intelligence began to understand the scope of the technological revolution they faced. What they discovered would have seemed like science fiction to artillery experts just 5 years earlier. Oberst Heinrich Müller, commanding the German Artillery Technical Assessment Division, submitted a classified report in February 1945 that revealed the full extent of American artillery advancement. Examination of captured American radio equipment reveals sophistication exceeding our most optimistic estimates. Enemy forward observer teams carry radio sets capable of simultaneous communication with multiple fire direction centers. Range, minimum 25 kilometers under all weather conditions. Battery life, 72 hours continuous operation. Weight, 14 kilograms including accessories. The German equivalent radio equipment weighed 38 kilograms, had a maximum range of 8 kilometers, and required frequent battery replacement. More critically, German radios could only communicate with single recipients, while American equipment routinely coordinated multiple frequencies simultaneously. But the real revelation came from captured American firing charts and calculation methods. German artillery relied on extensive mathematical tables and slide rule calculations that required 15 to 20 minutes to complete for complex fire missions. American fire direction centers used standardized graphical firing charts that reduced calculation time to under 2 minutes for any target within range. Captain Friedrich Braun, a German artillery officer with a doctorate in mathematics from Heidelberg University, analyzed captured American fire control documents. The Americans have reduced artillery to a standardized industrial process. Every calculation is simplified, every procedure standardized, every variable pre-computed. A high school graduate using their methods can perform fire direction calculations that would require a university mathematics degree using our procedures. The technological gap extended to our munition as well. Captured American artillery shells revealed proximity fuses, sophisticated electronic devices that detonated shells at optimal height above targets, dramatically increasing effectiveness against personnel and equipment. German shells relied on time fuses that required precise calculation and often failed to achieve optimal burst patterns. American artillery coordination didn't just kill German soldiers, it systematically destroyed German operational mobility by targeting the logistics networks that kept armies functioning. This represented a fundamental evolution in artillery employment from tactical weapon to strategic instrument of warfare. Lieutenant Colonel James Mitchell of the 9th Army's Artillery Coordination Center described the systematic targeting. We developed what we called mobility denial operations. Every bridge, every crossroads, every supply depot in German rear areas was pre-plotted and registered. When German forces attempted to move supplies or reinforcements, they walked into precisely coordinated fires that had been planned weeks in advance. The results were catastrophic for German logistics. Fuel trucks, ammunition convoys, and medical supplies faced constant interdiction from artillery fires that could be called in by any American observer within radio range. Major Rudolf Kleist of the 2nd Panzer Division logistics staff recorded the systematic breakdown. Fuel convoy departed at 0630 hours, 24 vehicles carrying 48,000 liters diesel fuel for division operations. At 8:47 hours, convoy reported taking accurate artillery fire at crossroads 847.394. Result, 18 vehicles destroyed, 6 damaged, 39,000 liters fuel lost, 12 personnel casualties.
remaining vehicles abandoned cargo and returned to depot. Division fuel reserves, 2.3 hours normal operations. This pattern repeated across German rear areas throughout early 1945. Supply convoys that had routinely delivered ammunition and fuel to forward units found themselves facing precision artillery fires at every major intersection, bridge, and supply point. German logistics networks, designed for the rapid advances of blitzkrieg, collapsed under the sustained pressure of American artillery interdiction.
British, the coordination specialists who made American artillery dominance possible. The Fire Direction Center personnel who calculated firing data and coordinated multiple batteries remained virtually unknown despite their crucial contribution to victory. These soldiers, many with college mathematics backgrounds, had revolutionized warfare through applied mathematics and systematic procedures. The German recognition. The ultimate recognition of American artillery superiority came from German veterans themselves, who coined the nickname König der Schlacht, King of Battle, that acknowledged both the dominance and the systematic nature of American firepower coordination. Colonel Heinrich Müller, captured in May 1945, provided the most eloquent German assessment. "We called American artillery the King of Battle, not because it was louder or more powerful than other weapons, but because it ruled the battlefield through precision and coordination. American artillery didn't just support attacks, it made attacks possible. It didn't just defend positions, it made positions impregnable. Every other weapon system served artillery, rather than artillery serving other weapons." This recognition represented a fundamental shift in German military thinking. Traditional German doctrine viewed artillery as supporting fires for infantry and armor operations. American artillery had demonstrated that coordinated firepower could be the decisive weapon system, with all other forces supporting artillery operations rather than the reverse. German post-war military analysis acknowledged that American artillery coordination represented a revolution in warfare comparable to the machine gun or tank. The mathematical precision and industrial sustainability of American firepower had made traditional tactical concepts obsolete, requiring complete reconceptualization of battlefield operations. The enduring mathematics of victory. The story of American artillery dominance in World War II revealed fundamental truths about modern warfare that extended far beyond individual battles or campaigns. The systematic application of mathematical precision to the problem of delivering explosive force had created a new paradigm for military effectiveness. The numbers told the complete story. 14.7 million artillery rounds fired with coordinated precision. 247,000 tons of explosive force delivered with mathematical accuracy. And German casualties that exceeded 70% attribution to artillery fire. Behind these statistics lay a revolution in military thinking that transformed artillery from a crude area weapon into a precision instrument of strategic destruction. American artillery had achieved what German blitzkrieg tactics attempted through mobility and surprise. The systematic breakdown of enemy military capabilities through coordinated application of superior technology and industrial capacity. But where blitzkrieg depended on individual initiative and tactical flexibility, American artillery relied on mathematical standardization and systematic procedures that could be sustained indefinitely. The German nickname King of Battle endured because it captured the essential nature of this transformation. American artillery hadn't just become more effective, it had become the dominant system around which all other battlefield activities revolved. The king didn't just rule through superior force, but through the systematic application of mathematical principles that made resistance futile and opposition suicidal. In the end, German troops called American artillery the King of Battle because they had witnessed the future of warfare, systematic, mathematical, and inexorably deadly. They had faced an enemy that fought with slide rules and logarithms, and they had learned that courage and skill meant nothing against equations that calculated death with industrial precision. The nickname was both tribute and warning. Tribute to American innovation, and warning that warfare itself had been forever changed by the marriage of mathematics and explosive force. The thunder of American guns had announced not just victory in World War II, but the dawn of modern military science, where battles would be won not by the bravest soldiers, but by the most precise calculations.